We've got a lot more news ahead, but first a recap of CBS This Morning in 60 seconds.
The Sleepy Hollow fire has burned more than 4,000 acres and taken with it 24 homes.
He will argue that what's missing from that GOP field is a straight talker, someone who won't mince words.
In Indonesia, a deadly military plane crash. The Hercules transport plane was carrying 113 people.
This new rule only applies to those workers who earn a salary who work more than 40 hours per week.
CBS News sources have confirmed that Sweat had a transistor radio and was monitoring news reports.
Greece is teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. There are reports this morning of last-minute negotiations to extend Greece's debt, but so far there's no deal.
This will be one of the most strict laws in the country mandating vaccines.
Trump called Mexicans who cross the U.S. border rapists who bring drugs and crime with them. And that language caused NBC to take action.
Kids share their thoughts on same-sex marriage.
Do you think anybody should be able to get married?
If you're old enough.
Oh. Would you want to get married?
Not really.
How come?
Because when you get married, the other person is entitled to any money the other person has.
I wonder if his parent's a lawyer. One parent's a lawyer. Anyways, hey everyone, I'm Anne-Marie Green.
And I'm Elaine Quijano. California lawmakers have passed one of the toughest vaccination bills in the country. The law would require mandatory immunizations for school children. There will be very few exceptions.
The push began after the huge measles outbreak at Disneyland. CBS News legal expert Ricky Kleeman joined CBS This Morning to explain.
Children in daycare, children in public schools, children in private schools, that they will have to be vaccinated against certain diseases, and I mean have to, that there will no longer be religious exemptions. There will no longer be personal belief exemptions. And what that means is that this will be one of the most strict laws in the country mandating vaccines.
So no vaccine, no school.
No vaccine, no school. Exactly correct. What would happen is you would have to take your child out of school if you have a religious or personal feeling about this and homeschool your child or put your child in a private study homeschool. Now, that's where the objections come in. So a parent says, you're interfering with this special relationship that I have with my child. It's my right to be able to say what poison, since that's how they look at it, goes into my child versus something that shouldn't go in. And my child has a right to a public education.
But doesn't it violate the parent's rights?
Well, the parents, I think, have a better argument, not that their personal rights are being violated, but the right to a public education is enshrined in the Constitution of California. So that's going to be the real legal ground here. And so maybe what the state has to do is if it says you have to homeschool or you go into a private study group, maybe it's time for the state to put things online so that kids are still schooled.
Stress, trauma, anxiety, all precursors to heart problems in women. An American Heart Association study says women with post-traumatic stress could face a 60% higher risk of cardiovascular disease.
For other trauma, the risk is 45% higher. Dr. Holly Phillips is here to walk us through how emotional trauma could seriously raise the risk of a heart attack or stroke for some women. Thanks for joining us. So women are more likely to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, right?
Yes, they are. And, you know, one of the things that made the study so significant is it looked at health effects not only on women who had PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, but also on women who had experienced other significantly traumatic life events that caused symptoms. So it was a huge study. They looked at 50,000 women and data over 20 years. And then they did find that women who had the diagnosis of PTSD had a 60% higher chance of having cardiovascular disease, specifically a cardiovascular event, things like a heart attack or stroke. Women who had lower level trauma, but that still caused symptoms, had a 45% increase.
You know, Holly, when we think about PTSD, this is really something that we think about for people who are in combat zones during wartime. How common is this PTSD?
You know, to me, what really struck me about this study was that only 1 in 5 women out of the 50,000 that were looked at had no trauma in their life. The others had either experienced PTSD or other significantly traumatic life experiences that caused symptoms, and for some people they didn't. But you do not have to be in combat to have PTSD. It could come from being exposed to a natural disaster, injury, or assault, and in many ways that's why women are more likely to suffer from PTSD. But also traumatic life events that sometimes we blow off. We just consider it life, right? Things like divorce or being unemployed, having financial strain. These things also raise the risk of heart disease.
I think poets forever have talked about the connection between the heart and the mind, but what do scientists say is the connection?
There's a very direct correlation, right? We often think of trauma as having emotional or mental effects, but it directly affects our health. So it increases our heart rate, it increases our blood pressure, and it releases all these compounds into our bloodstream that raise inflammation. In tandem, it dramatically increases our heart disease risk.
All right, let's turn now to another topic, sugary drinks. We all know we should avoid them, but we don't always think about the mounting statistics when choosing a drink.
Now, a new study links sugary drinks to more than 180,000 deaths worldwide, which includes 25,000 Americans. Pretty big numbers there. So explain the study to us.
Right. The numbers are absolutely staggering.
Yeah.
This study came out